Let's have a quick discussion on how good functional requirements can be found over the characteristics of good functional requirements. Now, as I discussed you last time, there could be a possibility to have a scenario. From that given scenario, you need to extract functional requirements. Now, once you are extracting these functional requirements, what I always suggest is to follow good functional requirements. There could be some functional requirements with different kinds of issues. But if you could be able to find a best solution or a best functional requirement, that's the optimal. For an example, there might be 10 functional requirements in the given scenario. But sometimes you could be able to find more specific, more measurable, achievable, relevant, testable functional requirement among those given 10 functional requirements. So you need to write those things in your answer script. So what kind of things that we are speaking in here in this good functional requirements point of view? Once you're finding these functional requirements, you should be able to tell it's a specific functional requirement. So simply, we have a clearly defined the expected behavior, a specific behavior we have. For an example, if it is a login, we can say the specific objective is to log in it. That's the specificity that we are speaking. And it should be measurable. What kind of measurability we have? We should have a success criteria. What we are telling is how we are telling this functional requirement is a success functional requirement, or after implementation, post implementation, what we are speaking. Post implementation, it's successfully implemented, so it's measurable. For an example, if we take the same login system, we can state this system, there's a username and a password. So the username and password is clicked and entered, then login button clicked, then the user redirected. This is something that we can measure it whether this is happening or not. Third one is achievable. We have to specifically mention a realistic scenario within project constraints. Now I get a very simple example that we want to develop a website or a web application for a small bakery. So it's a very small bakery. Their target is just a very smaller range and a very smaller set of people. So if you are mentioning as a functional requirement biometrical login, so which is a bit complicated and it's unwanted, because we know specifically there might be one or two people might manage this system. So why we want this kind of a complicated project constraint that we are speaking? So it's a bit of unrealistic. We can't argue it's not, but it's a bit of unrealistic. So what we have to tell is we have to mention, we have to specify achievable functional requirements. So that's very important scenario. The next point is it should be relevant. It should be aligned with the user and the business needs. So the functional requirement should be aligned with the user as well as the business needs. If it is not relevant or irrelevant what we are speaking, then it's not a good functional requirement. Again, if we take this complicated login systems like biometrical logins for a simple bakery or a small bakery in a village. So whether it's aligned with the users and the business needs, if you are proposing very expensive uh, hardware for a small bakery or a small shop in a village, is that a relevant hardware that we are proposing? And is that a functional requirement that we can find out? No. So that's the clear point that you have to understand. Your functional requirement should be relevant. Your functional requirement should be testable. So there should be a mechanism that your functional requirement is tested thoroughly. We have different kinds of testing aspects, starting from the unit testing. So your functional requirements should able to start with the unit testing, and it should be go much beyond that, and finally it should be tested throughout in any given scenario. But keep in mind, we can't test all the scenarios, but we have different scenarios that we can test. So among that, we are testing and we are telling, all right, the system is working well. Now, in a given scenario, if you found a lot of functional requirements, rather than randomly mentioning functional requirements, you can specify, you can explain this scenario much more with these characteristics. Then your answer is very strong and it's very nice, detailed functional requirements than just writing login. You can specify what kind of login, and you can specify the measurability of this scenario. You can specify what kind of achievability of this login scenario, whether this proposed mechanism is relevant or not, whether this is testable or not. So you can easily explain all of these simple things. If you take these initials, you can see it's smart, right? See SMART, which is smart. So smart, your functional requirements should be smart at the end of the day. Don't just mention the functional requirements. B, mention smart functional requirements. That's the best answer that you can give in the answer script.